My girlfriend showed up late to my birthday party with her new boss, publicly insulted me in front of my friends, and used my credit card to pay for their luxury lifestyle. I am a 32-year-old man, and I recently decided to walk away from a situation that had become unsustainable. I had been dating Camila, 29, for 3 years, whom I met at a real estate company's end-of-year party. I worked as a property manager with a decent salary and good commissions. She, at that time, had just joined as a receptionist. She always said she worked in administration, but her role was to answer calls and greet clients. She earned almost a third of what I did. I come from a working-class family in Chicago. My father was a plumber and my mother a cashier in a supermarket. Thanks to scholarships and night jobs as a security guard, I managed to pay for college. I graduated, obtained my real estate license, and started from the bottom, through hard work and without favors, until I managed to administer high-level properties. Camila, on the other hand, came from a more comfortable background. Her father was a financial advisor. Her mother never had to work, and they paid for her marketing degree at a private university that she never really used. She went from one job to another without stability. Even so, I let myself be carried away by her charm. She was blonde, had a gym-toned body, and wore designer clothes. Within a year, we moved in together to an apartment I had bought. It was a modern 2-room apartment in a quiet area with good appreciation potential. She promised we would share expenses, but her share of the bills was always pending. She never put her name on the contract, and I did not insist. I thought we were building something together. Over time, she started making certain comments. For example, that my car, a 5-year-old Subaru, was nice, but not what she envisioned for her future, or that our getaways to Wisconsin or Michigan were boring compared to her friends' trips to Europe. Sometimes she would come home with bags full of clothes and justify it all by saying she needed it for work. I overlooked it, thinking they were unimportant details. Last Saturday was my 32nd birthday. I did not plan anything fancy, just a simple gathering with my usual friends, my best friend Tomas and his girlfriend Beatrice, a college friend, another one from work, and a few more. It was going to be an afternoon barbecue on the balcony, board games, and maybe watching a game. Camila was distant all week, always on her phone, taking pictures, checking social media. She kept asking me what I was going to do for my birthday. When I told her something quiet, she looked disappointed. I reminded her that we were saving for a trip to Arizona the following month, where I planned to propose to her. The gathering started at 7 in the evening, but Camila did not show up until 8:30. She said she had blank because she was going to bring something special. When she arrived, she was wearing a very expensive dress I had never seen on her. I later found out it cost almost $1,000. And she brought a guy nobody knew. This is Julian, the new commercial director. We met at a client meeting, and I invited him over, she said casually. I was stunned. A meeting with a director when she was a receptionist? Everything was weird. Still, I did not make a scene. I greeted him politely, although I noticed my friends were as confused as I was. From the beginning, Camila did not leave Julian's side. She laughed at everything he said, touched his arm, and fixed her hair. He was the typical corporate climber, with an expensive watch, a tailor-made suit, and subtle but derogatory comments. He made jokes about my apartment, which I had paid for with great effort over the years, saying it was cozy and asking if it was mine or rented. I replied that I had bought it 2 years ago, just before prices went up. He smiled condescendingly and commented that he had just acquired a penthouse overlooking the lake. When you want something better, I will give you my agent's contact, he said. Tomas looked at me with a "what is wrong with this guy" expression. Beatrice tried to ease the tension by suggesting we play Never Have I Ever. It is a childish game, but it was already a tradition among us. The game started with typical things like accidents, fines, and college stories, until Julian, after whispering with Camila, said with a cynical smile, "I have never faked satisfaction in bed." Camila raised her glass of water, took a sip looking straight at me, and said aloud, "Julian does satisfy me. It is amazing how much things change when you have real ambition." The silence was absolute. I felt like the air was knocked out of me. My friends were paralyzed. Tomas clenched his jaw. Beatrice covered her mouth. My other friend looked away. I asked her in a low voice if she understood what she had just said. She did not back down. "Oh, do not be dramatic. Everyone knows things were bad between us. Julian takes me to real restaurants. He buys me what I want. Maybe if you had aspired to be more than just a simple building manager, I would not have had to look for something else. And as if that was not enough, Julian put his arm around Camila's shoulders and gave me a pitying look. I did not feel resentment, just brutal clarity. It all started with a phrase that pierced me. "You are a good guy, but you are not going anywhere, you know?" Beatrice said that. I stood still. I could have lost my temper, shouted, caused a scene, but no. Something inside me completely shut down. In that instant, I saw everything with absolute clarity. Our relationship was a lie I had refused to accept. I got up calmly, took my keys and wallet from the counter, and walked straight to the door. "Where are you going?" Beatrice shouted from the living room, more annoyed than worried. "It is your birthday party." I did not answer. I did not look back. I closed the door and went straight to the car. I drove to a hotel downtown, checked in, turned off my phone, and collapsed onto the bed. The next day, when I turned on my phone, I had 57 missed calls and over 30 text messages. 34 were from Beatrice, the rest from friends. I was not ready to face any of it yet, so I ended up posting on Reddit. Was I the problem for leaving my own party? Should I have confronted them at that moment? Edit. Thanks to everyone who commented. I am reading every word. To clarify some doubts. Yes, Beatrice had a key to my apartment. No, she did not contribute to the rent or the mortgage, although she said that buying groceries was her contribution. I never suspected she was cheating on me, at least not until now. Although looking back, there were signs I chose to ignore. Update. I called Tomas to find out what happened after I left, and what he told me turned my stomach. As soon as I walked out the door, Beatrice laughed and said, "God, so dramatic. He cannot even take a joke." Julian stayed with her for over an hour, hugging her the whole time. My friends did not know how to react until Tomas got fed up, stood up, and asked them both to leave my house. Beatrice got furious and started with her usual lies. "I practically live here. I pay for half of everything," which was totally false. She never contributed a cent to the mortgage or the furniture. Sarah, another friend, could not take it anymore and yelled at her. "You do not deserve him. He has worked hard for everything he has, and you just know how to take advantage." Beatrice threw a glass of water at her that ended up smashing against the wall. That is when Tomas kicked them both out, threatening to call the police. Kevin came by the next day to check my apartment. There was no damage, but Beatrice's car was still parked in the visitor's spot. Everything indicated she had spent the night there with Julian. Finally, I opened the messages. A true masterclass in manipulation. First group, midnight. "How dare you leave your own party? So childish. Julian says you are making a fool of yourself. If you cannot take a joke, maybe you are not the man I thought you were." Second group, 2 in the morning. "Are you really going to do this to me after 3 years over a joke? You are humiliating yourself." Third group, morning. "Honey, please, talk to me. I do not know what happened to me. Julian means nothing. I just wanted to make you jealous because you have been so distant lately." Last group, yesterday. "I made a mistake. We all make mistakes. Are you going to throw 3 years down the drain for one bad night? That is not the man I fell in love with. Call me. A pure narcissist's handbook. First attack, then guilt, then pleading, and finally emotional blackmail. I asked for a few days off work, claiming a family emergency. My boss was understanding. What will I do now? I have no idea. 3 years are not easily forgotten, but I cannot get that image out of my head. Her, proud, humiliating me in front of everyone, comparing my career to that guy's. I work in commercial property management. I am not a millionaire, but I have a good position, solid investments, and I plan to open my own firm in a couple of years. But that was not enough for Beatrice. Even if we had stayed together, I would never forget that night. Every time I looked at her, I would remember how she despised me in front of everyone. I am staying at the hotel until the weekend. Next week, when I know Beatrice is at work, I will go back to the apartment for some clothes and essentials. Then I will see what to do. Update. This will probably be the last one for a while. On Tuesday, I went back to the apartment. I knew Beatrice would be at work. I found she had taken several of her things, especially the expensive ones like designer bags, the iPad, everything I had given her. On the table was her key and a handwritten letter in pink ink with hearts over every I. I read the 4 pages once and threw them in the trash. In summary, it said she had been unhappy for months, that I was too focused on saving, and that she needed someone who shared her lifestyle aspirations. that she had been sleeping with Julian for 6 months, that they tried to avoid it but could not, and that she only stayed with me because I was stable, while she decided if Julian was serious. She was planning to break up with me after my birthday, but the joke sped up the process. Now she lives in Julian's apartment downtown. She says she is sorry for how everything happened, but that maybe it is for the best, because this way I can find someone on my level. The audacity is impressive. Someone on my level? As if she were above me, when I was the one who financed her life for years. I gathered my important things like documents, clothes, photos, and personal items. I discovered she had used my credit card to go to Julian's house by Uber, costing over $600. I canceled the card right away. I spoke to the landlord. I still had 7 months left on the lease, but when I explained the situation, he agreed to let me break it with only a 1-month penalty. Fortunately, the building has a waiting list. I already have a temporary rental in another area. It is smaller than the previous apartment, but with an incredible view of the park. I just needed a place where I could pull myself together. Finally, I replied to my friends. Kevin offered to let me stay at his apartment whenever I needed company, which I greatly appreciated. Beatrice sent me a very long message. She told me that the next day, Jessica tried to add her on Instagram as if nothing had happened. Beatrice, without hesitation, blocked her immediately. Tomas offered his help with the move, even mentioning that some of his construction buddies would be willing to have a conversation with Julian. I appreciated the gesture but declined the offer. At this point, I still have not responded to Jessica, and honestly, I do not know if I ever will. The strangest thing is that I do not feel as devastated as I thought I would. Actually, what I feel is relief, as if a huge burden has been lifted from me. Looking back with a clearer mind, I realize our relationship was completely unbalanced. I was little more than an ATM for her. I paid for 90% of our outings, bought her a MacBook, supposedly for job hunting, but she only used it for social media, covered her car repair expenses, the phone bill when she could not make ends meet, and even her expensive hair treatments that cost more than my own car payment. And what did I get in return? Apparently, faked intimacy, constant criticism of my lack of ambition, just because I refused to go into debt to keep up appearances, and to top it all off, public humiliation. But I never cheated on her. I never even considered it. When something is wrong in a relationship, you talk about it. You do not cheat for months and then expose the other person in front of all their friends. So, this is where I am now, taking things slowly. Tomorrow I have an appointment with a therapist. It is my first time going to one, but Tomas has been in therapy since his divorce, and he told me it has helped him a lot. Thank you, really, to everyone who offered support and advice. Knowing that I am not exaggerating and that walking away was the right thing to do has given me more peace than I imagined. Update. I did not think I would write about this again, but upon rereading my original post, I thought some people might want to know how everything unfolded after that disastrous birthday night. Get ready, because sometimes life takes its time to settle scores, but when it does it in a big way. The week after my post, I started therapy. It was less awkward than I thought. We talked about relationship patterns I had never noticed while I was immersed in them. Jessica used to make hurtful comments disguised as jokes. She would belittle my job saying I was just a property manager, and when I talked about a possible promotion, she would simply say, "It is okay for now." If someone praised my apartment, she would always compare me to her friends' boyfriends who had luxury cars or went on expensive vacations. If I asked about suspicious messages on her phone, she would call me controlling, but she would check my phone when I was showering. I had spent a year walking on eggshells, trying to satisfy someone who would never be happy with what I could offer. My therapist asked me what I wanted now. At that moment, I did not know how to answer, but now I do. I went back to work after that first week. My boss was understanding. He even shared that he went through something similar when his wife left him for her personal trainer. We had a good conversation, and he mentioned that the company was opening a new office in Denver to manage large-scale commercial projects. They needed someone with experience to lead it. He proposed me for the position, which meant a new title, a better salary, and the chance to start over in another city. He personally spoke well of me to the executives. Meanwhile, Jessica kept trying to contact me. She showed up at Kevin's house at 1 in the morning, causing such a scene that the neighbors threatened to call the police. She even intercepted me in my work parking lot, crying and saying that Julian was not who she thought he was and that she had made a terrible mistake. After I blocked her everywhere, She started creating new accounts to write to me. In the end, I sent her a single email. Jessica, this is definitively over. Your things are with your mother. Do not contact me again by any means. Any attempt will be documented and used to obtain a restraining order. Then I blocked her again. A week later, her mother called me saying Jessica was devastated. I reminded her that her daughter had been cheating on me with Julian for 6 months and then humiliated me in front of my friends. Her tears did not move me in the slightest. Her mother tried to justify it by saying that relationships are complicated and everyone deserves a second chance. I disagreed and ended the call. Later, while having dinner with Tomas, he told me something interesting. Julian had contacted him on LinkedIn to clear things up. According to Julian, Jessica had told him that I was controlling and verbally abusive, that I checked her expenses and did not allow her to have male friends. She even made him believe that we were practically separated but still living together because she feared my reaction if she left. Tomas, like a good friend, explained the truth to him, that I paid for absolutely everything, that I never raised my voice to her, and that I always tried to make her happy. He showed him screenshots of our group chats where Jessica bragged about my gifts and how I worked more to afford the whim she wanted. Julian, surprised, admitted that he did not know the full picture and had a lot to think about. 2 weeks after my first post, I accepted the job in Denver. I negotiated a higher salary, a relocation package, and I took Dave, a colleague who would now be my assistant manager, with me. We both rented apartments in the same building overlooking the mountains. It was a new beginning in a beautiful city. About 9 months passed since my move. The work was intense, but very rewarding. I managed high-level commercial properties, including a new development that attracted national attention. Our team grew from just Dave and me to 8 people. We consistently outperformed the other regional offices. I started hiking on weekends, meeting new people who had no idea about my past. I got into the best physical shape of my life and started training for a half marathon. Therapy helped me a lot to process everything and identify signs I had previously ignored. I even started dating again, nothing serious at first. I had a brief relationship with a pediatric surgeon named Clara, but we both knew our schedules did not align. Still, it was comforting to realize I could connect with someone again without making comparisons. One Saturday, Tomas called me out of the blue. He was laughing so hard he could barely speak. "You are not going to believe this," he finally said. It turns out Julian had broken up with Jessica about 2 months after I left. According to mutual acquaintances, he got tired of her drama and excessive spending. She was planning to move into his apartment permanently, but he kicked her out when he discovered she had maxed out one of his credit cards buying designer clothes. She tried to go back to her parents, but her father refused to take her in. Apparently, he had been warning her about her selfish behavior for years and was tired of covering for her. Jessica ended up in a complicated situation, without a place of her own and with a lifestyle she could not sustain on her own. She was forced to share a small apartment with 2 roommates. She had been fired from the company where we both had worked after trying to spread rumors about me and causing a scene in the lobby when security did not allow her to go up to my old office. Her so-called respected administrative position was easily replaced by someone who actually fulfilled their responsibilities. The most ironic part is that she was now working as a brand promoter in a wholesale supermarket, handing out small cups of juice and frozen snacks to customers. The same woman who used to mock my career and demand constant luxuries now spent her workdays on her feet, begging strangers to try cheese cubes. I cannot say I was happy to see her like that, but I did feel that, somehow, life had done its thing to balance the scales. However, the story does not end there. A month after Tomas's call, I had to travel to Chicago for an important real estate conference. Our Denver office was selected to present its development strategy as a case study, which was a great recognition within the industry. I was nervous, but very well prepared. The presentation was a complete success. Afterwards, several important developers approached me to talk. One even hinted at the possibility of offering me a partnership position if I decided to leave the corporate world. That night, at the networking reception after the event, I was talking with some colleagues when I felt a pat on my shoulder. I turned around, and there was Julian, dressed in an expensive though somewhat ill-fitting suit, visibly uncomfortable. "Can we talk for a moment?" he said, looking around nervously. I was surprised to see him, but I kept my composure and nodded. We moved away from the group to a quieter corner of the room. I noticed he was different. He no longer had that arrogant smile, and instead, there was something that seemed like genuine remorse. "I owe you an apology," he began, avoiding my gaze. "That night, I did not know the whole truth. Jessica told me that you two were not doing well, that you were emotionally distant, and that you were only living together until the lease ended. She assured me that you knew she was dating other people." I said nothing, just let him continue. "After your friend Tomas cleared things up for me, I broke up with her. But by then, you had already left, and I did not know how to contact you. When I saw your name on the conference program, I knew I had to approach you." "I appreciate that," I replied sincerely. Julian hesitated for a moment and added, "There is something else you should know. Jessica has been trying to get a job at my company. She is going around saying we are still together and that I am going to help her get in. I have already informed human resources to protect myself." I laughed. That was very typical of her. "She is not doing well," Julian continued. "She lost her apartment last month. From what I know, she is sleeping on friends' sofas. Debt collectors are also still calling me looking for her." He handed me a card. "If she tries to contact you or cause you problems, let me know. I will back you up." We said goodbye, and as he walked away, I felt like a chapter was closing. Julian had been an idiot at the time, but he was also a victim of Jessica's manipulations, just like I had been for so long. But the real surprise came the next day. I had a breakfast meeting scheduled with Robert Carpenter, CEO of Westwood Development Group, one of the most important real estate developers in the Midwest. They were interested in expanding into Colorado, and my presentation had caught their attention. When I arrived at the hotel restaurant, I saw Robert sitting near the window. I approached and noticed he was not alone. In front of him, trying to look professional in a somewhat pretentious jacket, was Jessica. My stomach lurched. She had not seen me yet, but Robert signaled for me to come over. "Here he is," he said, standing up to greet me. "The man of the hour. Jessica was telling me you two worked together in Chicago." Jessica turned slowly, and her face turned pale when she saw me. "Yes, we did," she stammered. Robert invited me to sit down. "Jessica is applying for a position on the administrative team. She says she has experience in real estate management." Jessica looked at me, silently begging me with her eyes. I had two options: expose her or maintain a higher ground. I decided to speak tactfully. "It is true that we worked at the same company, although in different areas. I was in property management, and Jessica worked at the reception." I saw her relax, thinking I was helping her support her story. But I was not finished. "In fact," I continued, looking at Robert, "I was surprised to see her here. I understood that after being fired for inappropriate conduct, she was working as a promoter in a supermarket." Robert's eyebrows shot up. "I see," he said in a much more serious tone. "Jessica, could you give us a moment? I need to speak privately with Mr. R." Jessica stood up abruptly. "This is very unprofessional," she hissed at me. "You are just resentful because I left you for someone better." Robert was perplexed by her reaction. "That is enough," he ordered. "Please leave before I have to call security." She stormed out, accidentally bumping into a waiter on her way. Robert apologized. "I am very sorry about this. She was recommended by a friend of my wife, claiming to have solid experience in property administration." "Do not worry," I replied. "We all make mistakes when hiring." The atmosphere returned to normal, and we resumed our business conversation. By the end of breakfast, we had outlined an alliance that would later allow me to lead the regional development strategy in the Rocky Mountains area, with a compensation that far exceeded my previous salary. I returned to Denver the next day with a sense of relief. I had completely severed all ties to the past that connected me to Jessica. I threw myself entirely into work, finalizing the details to formally join Westwood in 3 months. It was during this time that I met Raquel, a landscape architect collaborating on one of our projects. She was intelligent, talented, down to earth, and had a contagious sense of humor. We started by chatting about native plants for a patio and ended up having dinner and then sharing a weekend hike that had nothing to do with work. Unlike Jessica, Raquel never asked how much I earned or commented on my modest but well-maintained SUV. She used to share expenses with me, did not accept expensive gifts, and showed much more interest in who I was as a person than in what I could offer her financially. She had a stable career of her own circle of friends, and a life she had built through her own efforts. She was not looking for me to support her, but invited me to be part of her world. 6 months after starting my new position at Westwood, I was having dinner with Raquel in my apartment when I received a notification on my phone. I do not usually check messages during dinner, but it was an email from Tomas with the subject line, "You have to see this." The message contained a link to a fundraising page titled, "Help Jessica Recover." In the picture, Jessica appeared noticeably deteriorated, standing in front of what looked like a motel room. The campaign description seemed straight out of a fiction novel. It said something like, "After leaving an abusive relationship and being blacklisted in my industry due to my ex's influence, I have struggled to stay afloat. Despite my extensive experience in commercial real estate management, I have not been able to find suitable employment. I am currently facing eviction and need help paying the first and last month's rent while I try to rebuild my career. Any contribution would be a great help at this difficult time." She had set a goal of $5,000, but so far, she had only raised $212 from 4 people, mostly family members. I showed the page to Raquel, who was stunned. "That is totally false. Should not you do something about it?" she asked me. I thought about it for a moment, but ended up shaking my head. Whoever knows me knows that is not the truth, and whoever does not know me, honestly, it does not matter. Let her keep her fictional story. Raquel looked at me with an expression I will never forget, a mixture of respect and something deeper. "You are a good man," she said. "Most people would want revenge." I smiled. "The best revenge is to live well, and I am living very well." 2 months later, during a sunrise hike in the mountains, I proposed to her. It was simple, intimate, meaningful, the complete opposite of what my relationship with Jessica had been. Raquel said yes immediately. Now we are organizing a small ceremony, only with close people. Sometimes, when I remember that night Jessica humiliated me in front of my friends, I think about how something that at the time felt like the end of the world turned out to be the starting point towards a fuller life. That episode forced me to end a draining relationship, pushed me to make career decisions I might have otherwise avoided, and ultimately led me to Denver, to Westwood, to Raquel. It led me to a more authentic, more honest life, more my own. Sometimes, the toughest moments are not punishments, but redirections towards where we truly should be. Last week, as we were leaving a restaurant downtown, I saw a familiar figure across the street. Jessica was standing in front of an office building, wearing a sandwich board advertising a store's liquidation sale. Our eyes met for just a second. I saw her face go from recognition to shame, and then to anger. I just nodded and kept walking, Raquel's hand intertwined with mine. "Was that her?" Raquel asked. "Distant past," I replied. And for the first time, it was true. Final update, 2 years later. Today, a colleague showed me this story, which apparently had been archived. Rereading it, I feel like I am looking at someone else's life. Everything has changed so much that I felt the need to leave a closing for anyone who might read this by chance. Raquel and I have been married for just over a year. We bought a beautiful house near the mountains, with enough land for her to explore her landscaping ideas and for me to finally have the workshop I always wanted. In 3 months, our first daughter will be born. We are thinking of naming her Claire, after Raquel's grandmother. Professionally, things are going even better than expected. My collaboration with Westwood grew and transformed into something much bigger. Last year, Robert offered me the chance to lead a new project, a development firm focused on sustainable commercial spaces, with direct investment from Westwood. Basically, I am heading my own company, backed by one of the industry giants. It is a lot of work, yes, but also immensely satisfying. About Jessica, I learned from third parties that she achieved some stability. She works as an assistant manager at a chain store and is dating a divorced man who owns some properties. It is not the glamorous life she always chased, but at least she seems to have settled down. Sincerely, I hope she has found some peace. Julian, to my surprise, contacted me about 6 months ago. He now works for a commercial construction company that was bidding on one of our projects. We met for coffee, and he apologized again for his involvement in all that. He said it was the wake-up call he needed to realize the kind of people he was surrounded by. We are not friends, but we can work together professionally. People can change. Tomas and Beatriz, his girlfriend, now wife, got married last summer. During their honeymoon, we hosted them in Denver. We took them hiking, showed them our favorite places, and witnessed Tomas struggling unsuccessfully with the altitude. They are considering moving here too. The Denver office needs a good construction manager, and he fits the bill perfectly. A month ago, during a layover at the Chicago airport, I ran into Jessica's mother. I was coming from a business meeting. She was saying goodbye to a family member. She recognized me instantly, but approached with some reservation, as if she did not know how to react. "You look peaceful," she commented with a half-smile. "Yes," I replied, "I am." There was a pause. Then she said, with a mixture of honesty and regret, "Jessica has changed. It was not easy for her, but she is doing her best to rebuild her life. I think she is finally learning to see things more clearly." I responded with a calm gesture. There were no recriminations or reproaches. I just nodded. "I'm glad to hear that." Before saying goodbye, she lowered her voice and said, "I wish we had seen everything with different eyes at the time. Sometimes one supports without questioning and makes mistakes." "It happens to all of us," I answered. "What matters is that we can move on." As I walked away, I understood that I no longer carried any weight related to the past. There was no anger, no sadness, no need for belated justice. Only a mature acceptance of what had happened. And if anyone reading this is going through a period of chaos, betrayal, or confusion, I can only say this. You are not defined by that moment. Your story does not end when you are broken. There is more beyond the pain. There are new paths, genuine connections, and opportunities you never imagined. The pain does not disappear suddenly, but it loses strength with every firm step you take. And one day, without you realizing it, the storm is behind you. Not because the wind stopped, but because you learned to move forward, even in the rain.